Autumn, 2022. The drizzling rain fell from the gray sky, lightly sprinkling onto the city streets. It was autumn, and every now and then, you could see pedestrians without umbrellas, shielding their heads with their hands as they hurried by. In a narrow alleyway, a teenager of about 17 or 18 was sitting across from an old man under a rain shelter next to a supermarket. Outside the shelter, the world was dim, and the ground was soaked into a shallow black by the rain. Only the ground under the shelter remained dry, as if it was the only pure land left in the world. In front of them was an old wooden chessboard, and above their heads was a red signboard that read, Fuelai Supermarket. Checkmate, said the teenager, Ching Chen, as he stood up, leaving the old man with thinning hair sitting there. Ching Chen looked at him calmly and said, there's no point in struggling. I can still. The old man protested, we're only 13 moves in. In his words, the old man felt somewhat embarrassed about the situation he was in, having been defeated in just 13 moves. Ching Chen didn't explain anything. The chessboard was full of lethal moves, and it was the final moment when the dagger was revealed. The teenager had a clean face and clear eyes. He sat there in his simple school uniform, as if purifying the world around him. The old man threw the chess piece he was holding onto the board, conceding defeat. Ching Chen, as if no one else was around, walked into the supermarket counter, took 20 yuan from the change basket under the counter, and put it in his pocket. The old man grumbled as he watched Ching Chen, I lose 20 yuan to you every day. I just won 20 yuan from old Li and old Zhang this morning, and now I've lost it all to you. Ching Chen pocketed the money, then sat back down by the chessboard and began to review the game. If they were still willing to play chess with me, I wouldn't have to win money through you. You need face, I need money, it's fair and reasonable. You've got me all figured out, haven't you? The old man grumbled. The fortune teller said I could live till 78, I'm only 50 now. If I lose 20 yuan to you every day, how much money would I lose? But I also teach you how to play chess to win back your face. Ching Chen replied calmly, in that sense, you're not at a loss. The old man grumbled, but what you've been teaching these past few days is all useless. Ching Chen glanced at him, don't talk about yourself like that. The old man was taken aback. The old man irritably set up the chessboard again, then eagerly said, all right, let's review. At this moment, Ching Chen suddenly lowered his head. The time that had just passed seemed to replay in his mind. The cannon that came at him, the brave pawn on the Chu River and Han boundary, echoed in his mind one by one. Not just these, there was also the uncle who passed by them while they were playing chess, holding 4 freshly baked buns in his hand. The steam from the buns fogged up the transparent plastic bag, giving it a layer of white mist. A little girl in a white dress walked by with an umbrella, and there were 2 beautiful butterflies on the surface of her little leather shoes. Above the sky, the swaying rain fell into the alley, crystal clear. At the end of the alley, the 103 bus flashed past the narrow entrance, and a woman in a beige trench coat ran towards the bus stop with her umbrella. The sound of footsteps, the sound of rainwater flowing into the drain cover on the side of the road, these noisy sounds made the world seem extraordinarily quiet. All of this, Ching Chen had not forgotten, although it was a bit difficult to recall. But difficulty doesn't mean it's impossible. This peculiar memory power was a gift that Ching Chen was born with, as if he had casually pulled a save file from the river of time and then read the images in that save file. Ching Chen suppressed the dizziness in his brain and picked up the chess pieces on the board. The old man immediately fell silent, his eyes fixed on the chessboard. The review after each game was also part of the betting agreement. Ching Chen was in charge of teaching chess, and the old man was learning chess after losing money. This scene was a bit strange. Ching Chen did not have the modesty and shyness that young people should have when facing elders, but rather, he was like a teacher. The other party didn't think there was anything wrong with it. Red cannon moves to the 2nd rank, black cannon moves to the 5th rank, red horse advances to the 3rd rank, black horse advances to the 7th rank, red rook advances 1 rank, black rook moves to the 8th rank. Ching Chen moved the chess pieces step by step. The old man didn't blink. Everything was normal in the opening, but he couldn't figure out how he suddenly fell into a disadvantage on the 6th move when he clearly ate the opponent's horse. The essence of the 13-move sacrifice horse is the 6th move of advancing the rook and sacrificing the horse, which is the killer move to tear open the defense. Ching Chen said quietly, I saw the game you played with that old man in Wangqing Park the day before yesterday. He likes to play the running game. You can beat him with this 13-move sacrifice horse. The old man fell into deep thought, then asked softly, can I really beat him? If you learn the 13-move sacrifice horse I taught you within a week, you can regain your face. Ching Chen said, after all, his chess is not that good. The old man's face showed a hint of joy, but he suddenly asked, if I learn chess for a week and can beat him, how long do I have to learn chess to beat you? Under the rain shelter, Ching Chen thought seriously. The fortune teller said you could live till 78. Then it's too late. The old man's face fell. If you say less, I might live till 79. Hey, you should be having evening self-study now. Why did you finish school so early today? He knew that Ching Chen was a high school senior, and today was Tuesday, so the 13 middle school 2 blocks away should be having evening self-study at this time. Ching Chen thought for a moment and replied, I'm waiting for someone. Waiting for someone? The old man was taken aback. Qing Chen got up and looked out at the light rain outside the shelter, his eyes drifting in the rain curtain. The old man said, Qing Chen, you're so good at chess, why don't you participate in chess competitions? You said you're short of money, right? If you win the championship, you'll get money too. Qing Chen shook his head. I just memorized a lot of chess manuals in my head, it doesn't mean I'm that good at chess. Memory doesn't mean analytical ability, it's okay to play with you guys, but I'll show my weakness when I meet a real master. My path is not here, chess is just temporary. All memorized in your head. The old man sighed. I used to think that photographic memory was something people made up. The rain gradually stopped. Just then, the old man noticed that Qing Chen seemed to pause for a moment. He followed the teenager's gaze to the end of the alley and happened to see a couple walking towards them with a little boy. The middle-aged woman was dressed in a stylish trench coat, holding a cake box in her hand. There was a beautiful purple ribbon tied on the box. The gray world couldn't hide the joy on the three people's faces. Qing Chen turned around and left, leaving the old man sitting under the rain shelter in front of the Fulai supermarket sighing softly. The middle-aged woman saw Qing Chen's back. She called out Qing Chen's name, but Qing Chen didn't look back and disappeared at the other end of the alley. The walls on both sides of the alley were very old. After the white walls fell off, they left patches of mottled red brick. The person Qing Chen was waiting for had arrived, but he didn't want to wait anymore. A middle-aged woman briskly walked up to the entrance of Fula supermarket, looking at the old man. Mr. Zhang, why is Qing Chen here again to play chess with you? The tone of their conversation suggested that they knew each other. However, Mr. Zhang's tone was not as polite. Why are you asking me about your son? He has no living expenses and can only earn a little money for meals by playing chess. The middle-aged woman, Zhang Wanfang, was stunned, but I give his father Qing Chen's living expenses every month. This statement also stunned Mr. Zhang. Then I don't know what's going on. Mr. Zhang pondered. Zhang Wanfang was not a poor person, and it seemed that she gave Qing Chen a lot of living expenses, but why was the boy still living so tightly? Qing Chen didn't seem like a spendthrift. He lived frugally every day, never taking a sip of a beverage. Shouldn't he be attending evening self-study at this time? Zhang Wanfang asked. Only then did Mr. Zhang remember. He seemed to say he was waiting for someone. No, I have to go home and check, said Zhang Wanfang. As she was about to leave quickly with her cake, she heard the man next to her say, Wanfang, it's Haohao's birthday today, we've already made reservations, and we have to take him to a movie after dinner. Zhang Wanfang turned to look at the man. Qing Chen might have skipped class, I can't just ignore it. He's 17 and can take care of himself, and besides, there's his real father. The man finished and then slowed his tone. Actually, it's okay to go see him on the weekend. Today let's accompany Haohao first. Upon hearing this, Zhang Wanfang furrowed her brows, but after a few seconds, she eventually sighed. Okay, let's celebrate Haohao's birthday first today. In the shady path of the west residential compound of the city hall, Qing Chen silently walked under the camphor tree. Unlike the style of modern high-rise buildings, the houses here are all four-story low-rise buildings from the 1970s, without elevators, gas, and the sewer occasionally gets blocked. High-power appliances cannot be used at home, as they would trip the circuit breaker. Qing Chen entered the dim entrance, ignoring the lock opening and house-selling ads on the wall like psoriasis, took out his keys and opened the door of his first-floor home. A 76-square-meter house with 2 bedrooms and a living room. The first-floor room has poor lighting. He took out his phone, scrolled through his contacts, and made a call. Hello, Dad. The voice on the other end of the phone interrupted him. If you want living expenses, go to your mother. I have no money, she is very rich now. In the midst of the conversation, the sound of playing mahjong came from the other side of the phone. I don't want money, Qing Chen said in a low voice. I haven't asked you for money in a long time. Then what is it? The man impatiently asked. Another parent-teacher conference at school? Go to your mother, this kind of thing. Before the other party could finish speaking, Qing Chen hung up the phone this time. He leaned lightly against the closed door of his home, then lifted the sleeve of his school uniform. He stared blankly at the white numbers and symbols on his forearm, like a countdown of 5 hours 58 minutes and 13 seconds. The white numbers were like glowing tattoos embedded in his flesh and skin. No matter how he rubbed, he couldn't erase them. Looking closely at them, Qing Chen also saw special and intricate patterns in the numbers, like mechanical parts interlocking with each other, full of a futuristic sense of technology. The numbers were changing silently. Countdown 5 hours 58 minutes and 12 seconds. Countdown 5 hours 58 minutes and 11 seconds. With only 5 hours and 58 minutes left, all of this seemed to be reminding Qing Chen that something incredible would happen in 5 hours and 58 minutes. Even though there was no sound, Qing Chen distinctly heard the ticking of the second hand in his heart. Qing Chen glanced at the phone that had just hung up and then at the empty room. He didn't know what kind of life he would face after 5 hours and 58 minutes, he only knew that the only one he could rely on was himself. Time is a heavy unit of measurement. The length of life, the breadth of civilization, are all marked by it. The concept of time exists in everyone's life. So when any countdown appears in your life, no matter what it counts down to, it will give you a sense of urgency. There are still 5 hours, and no one knows what the end point of this countdown is. Could it be danger? Or another kind of life? Qingchen couldn't be sure, he could only make the worst assumption first. Therefore, he must prepare some things before this countdown is over. If danger really comes, then he needs to, at least within his power, have some ability to resist danger. Qingchen changed into a clean gray coat, using the shadow of the hood to cover his face. In the cover of night, he went out and walked towards the farmer's market. In October in Luocheng, the sky was already dark. The sound of cooking came from the residential building, the explosion sound made by the collision of vegetables and oil, followed by a tempting smell. The smell of eggs, pork, and mutton, like strands of information elements, rushed into Qingchen's brain. When one day he needs this information, he can extract a save from his memory. He bought pliers and a shovel at the hardware store, a bag of rice and a bag of flour, as well as table salt at the grain and oil store. He also bought several boxes of antibiotics at the pharmacy, batteries, flashlights, and compressed biscuits at the supermarket. When he didn't know what he was going to face, he could only prepare as much as possible. These things almost depleted all of Qingchen's savings. After Qingchen brought the items home, he went into the kitchen. He first placed the usable knives on the cutting board in the most convenient places in the room. The kitchen knife was placed under the pillow, and the boning knife was placed on the bedside table. Countdown 2 hours 43 minutes 11 seconds. He checked that all the doors and windows were tightly closed, and then sat on the edge of the bed to ponder, should he seek help? Who to find? His mother has a new family, and his father is a gambler. In fact, when Qingchen discovered a few hours ago that a countdown had appeared on his arm, the 17-year-old him instinctively wanted to seek help from his parents. But he denied this idea. Qingchen tried to take a photo of the white countdown on his arm with his phone, but found that the white lines that were clearly visible to his naked eyes did not appear on the phone screen at all. The room was dimly lit without lights on, the windows were not soundproofed, and because it was on the first floor, he could often hear the footsteps of pedestrians outside. The footsteps outside, the breathing inside the room, the dimly lit phone screen, everything was so peaceful and eerie. For such eerie and absurd things, seeking help from ordinary people is probably useless, and he doesn't have any particularly good friends at school either. Even if there were, he shouldn't involve ordinary people in such matters, should he? So, if he wants to seek help, he can only think of other ways. Wait, Qingchen seemed to think of something. He got up and went into the living room to search. 2 minutes later, he silently looked at the Guanyin Bodhisattva pendant in his hand. Then he carefully placed it in front of him and bowed 9 times. The last preparation, done. When it comes to seeking the assistance of a deity in the face of impending crisis, it may seem like a desperate attempt to find a cure. However, Qingchen believed that this supernatural phenomenon on his arm should be dealt with by a supernatural entity. To Qingchen, there was no harm in paying respects. He liked to make preparations beforehand, leaving no room for regret. It was 9:30 in the evening. Qingchen sat on his bed, glanced at his phone, the only source of light in his bedroom. The only messages on his WeChat were a few lines from his desk mate Nangingchen. No one else had messaged him. His mother, Zhang Wanfang's WeChat profile picture was quiet, which made Qingchen feel a touch of loneliness. Of course, it was just a touch. He didn't know what he was expecting. He didn't blame his mother. His father had gambled away multiple properties and was abusive and unfaithful. Qingchen didn't think his mother was wrong to initiate a divorce. On the contrary, Qingchen, who had once witnessed his father hitting his mother, was even happy about his mother's decision because it was the right thing to do. Before his parents divorced, his grandmother tried to persuade his mother not to divorce. How will you, a woman with a teenage son, ever marry again? Who would want to marry you? Hearing this, Qingchen chose to live with his father when his parents divorced. He remembered the shocked expressions on his parents' faces, but Qingchen knew this was also the right choice. Now his mother has started a new life, formed a new, happy family. Qingchen might feel a bit lost, but he was still very careful not to disturb her. Countdown 2:31:12. Qingchen suddenly thought of a question. If these were his last 2.5 hours of his life, what should he do? This question is both serious and romantic because it asks you, what is the thing you most want to do in your life, but have not yet done, or dare not do? Unexpressed love. People you wanted to see but didn't, places you wanted to go but didn't, words you wanted to say but didn't. All fall within the scope of the answer. This question directly asks the heart. Qingchen got up and put on his coat. Surprisingly, with the countdown ticking away, he chose to go out again. He pushed his old bicycle out of the house and rode towards his destination. The autumn night wind was slightly chilly, and the number of pedestrians on the road was dwindling. Riding on his bicycle, Qingchen's face was calm, his coat flapping in the wind on the bridge. He did have many regrets in his life, and many things he dared not do, but tonight, he didn't need fear or cowardice, only courage. At some point, Qingchen thought, if he was really going to die tonight, he should complete the most important things in his life. He didn't have time that he first went to the Peony Hotel, then the Luoqing Hotel, and then the Luoyin residential area, but he couldn't find the person he was looking for. Ching Chen rode his bike through alleys, across the Sevenly River Bridge, and arrived at a residential building when he saw the familiar old second-hand motorcycle parked downstairs and heard the sound of mahjong on the second floor. He then picked up his phone and dialed 110, "Hello officer, I want to report a group gambling at Luojian District, Longting Community, Building 17, Unit 2, Room 201. The dispatcher on the other end of the phone seemed to pause for 2 seconds before responding, "Okay, we will arrange for officers to go there now." It was not until this moment that Ching Chen felt relieved and turned around to ride his bike home. His thoughts were clear. When he got home, Ching Chen looked at the white lines on his arm. Countdown 1 to 0, 2 to 21. He began to review his preparations. Wait, was he going to stay at home to face the moment? Ching Chen had once seen a horror movie where the protagonist encountered a dirty thing and would be haunted by a ghost at 12 o'clock every night. Then the protagonist would hide everywhere, even in the deep mountains and old forests. But the ghost could always find him. That time, Ching Chen wondered why the protagonist didn't go to a crowded place. Although ghosts are powerful, people generally feel safer in crowded places. For example, the protagonist could stay in a nightclub, and when the ghost comes at midnight, hundreds of people are shaking their heads to the roaring music. It should be the ghost who is more scared. So Ching Chen began to think, should he also go to a crowded place? Or, he could go directly to the White Horse Temple in Luocheng. After all, there are bodhisattvas there. Not only is there Guanyin Bodhisattva, but also Manjusri Bodhisattva and Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. It also seems safe. However, Ching Chen ultimately chose to stay at home. He felt that compared to goblins and ghosts, it was more likely that zombies or something similar would appear when the countdown ended. If that's the case, going to a crowded place is no different from seeking death. On the other hand, bodhisattvas don't seem to handle such matters. Ching Chen had already prepared supplies at home. If it really is a zombie attack, he could hide at home for a while. Countdown 00:31:49. In the last half hour, Ching Chen turned on the desk lamp and quietly wrote a will, leaving it on the desk. If he were to die today, perhaps one day in the future his family and friends could see his last words. If he doesn't die, then his life might be a whole new world. Countdown 00:00:12. After writing his will, Ching Chen sat up straight. He held the boning knife tightly in his right hand, his clear eyes narrowing. The closer it was to the final moment, the calmer his emotions became. Just like a tsunami pausing before it engulfs a lonely island, there are no undercurrents beneath the sea surface, just deep thoughts and blazing courage. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There were no ghosts, no zombies, no disasters. Ching Chen watched as time around him froze. The time on his phone seemed to be forever stuck at 12:00:00. The second hand on the clock on the wall suddenly stopped moving, and the light outside the window no longer flickered. He stood up, the frozen time seemed to shatter at his movement, and the world in his eyes shattered like a mirror. Ching Chen held the boning knife in his hand and looked around. There was no desk, no room, only darkness. Then, he too was engulfed in darkness. Time seemed to have passed for a long time, but it also seemed like only a moment. In this instant, Ching Chen suddenly lost his sense of time. In the darkness, the fragments of the world began to reassemble. Those fragments, which came from nowhere, combined in an instant to form a brand new world. Ching Chen was lying on a narrow, hard bed. This was a completely unfamiliar environment. He had never been here before. First, he looked at his palm. It was empty, the boning knife had disappeared. Then he looked at his arm and found that the white lines on his arm had changed. Return countdown 48:00:00, 48 hours, that is, 2 days, Ching Chen thought. The next moment, the countdown ticked a second. Return countdown 47 hours 59 minutes and 59 seconds. Countdown to regression 47:59:58. Countdown to regression 47:59:57. Did he cross over? So, the end of the countdown is a crossing to another spacetime, and the countdown to regression signifies the time to return. Thinking of this, Ching Chen breathed a sigh of relief. Being able to go back is a good thing. Although there might not be anyone missing him there. His mother has a new life and couldn't miss him. His father should be in jail. So, he probably couldn't miss him either. But even so, he still wants to go back and take a look, and what he has to do now is to live well in these 48 hours. So, now it's the first day of the countdown. Ching Chen began to re-examine this new world in front of him. The moment the world was pieced back together, Ching Chen saw the prison uniform on his body and immediately understood his situation. He was in a gray and dim room. Except for a technologically advanced alloy gate, the rest was completely enclosed walls. The 90 centimeters wide door had a small window. But the window was closed now. The prison cell was a single room, with only a bed in it, covered with a thin sheet. There was also a shelf next to it, on which there was nothing but a quilt, a toothbrush, and a towel. The walls of the prison cell were gray, but what Ching Chen couldn't understand was that the gray walls under the outside light were clearly emitting a metallic luster. Metal walls? Ching Chen sat up and touched the walls in a daze. Where would such a cost-ignoring building material be? Used, obviously, this place does not belong to the world he once knew. He quickly looked down at his own palm. The fingerprints on this palm were exactly the same as his own, even the pores on his hand were not half wrong. This is his own body. After crossing to this world, the boning knife in Qing Chen's hand was gone, and the clothes on his body were also gone, but the body was indeed his own. The fingerprints and pore positions can't be faked. Qing Chen sat on the bed hugging his knees. He looked at the heavy alloy door, not knowing what he was thinking. Slowly, there began to be a commotion outside the door, and even the sound of someone banging on the alloy prison door. Qing Chen slowly walked to the door, trying to listen to what was being yelled outside, but before he could hear clearly, the alloy door made a clear pneumatic transmission sound, and the door opened. He looked outside the door. Outside was a U-shaped corridor. In this square prison fortress, there are 7 floors. Each floor has neatly arranged prison cells. The sparse lights outside in the vast prison fortress, the dark prison cells and the open alloy doors, are like cages for wild beasts. Qing Chen stood in the doorway, as if he would step into an unknown life. As soon as he stepped out in the wide prison, a broadcast suddenly sounded from somewhere. It was a pleasant female voice. It's 7 o'clock in the morning, breakfast time. Please all prisoners line up in order to go to the dining hall for breakfast. The voice echoed in the prison fortress, and Qing Chen was still looking at the threshold in front of him. It seemed that as soon as he stepped out, everything would be different. In fact, he felt that he had been different from a certain moment. When did it start? Probably when he thought he only had 2.5 hours left in his life. So he did what he wanted to do but didn't dare to do before. He even reported his own dad. What else is there to face? He stepped out of the prison cell, but the next moment he was stunned, seeing that in the not-so-wide corridor outside, there was a prisoner standing in front of each prison cell door. Qing Chen's pupils suddenly contracted. An old man with a hunchback looked at him, and in the other's eye socket, there was a mechanical eye with a hint of red light. The other's entire right eye socket was mechanical, and this metal part extended to the right temple position. The mechanical eye didn't look sophisticated, even a bit rough, but for some reason, Qing Chen felt a sense of oppression from this eye staring at him. It seemed that the other party was analyzing the details on him, just like he uses memory to analyze others. A burly middle-aged prisoner, his right arm was completely made of machinery. The other party moved his fingers. Qing Chen could hear the metallic sound of the mechanical parts turning when the other party's palm opened and closed. That sturdy metal arm, like a twisted steel muscle, was strong and violent. In this entire prison fortress, half of the people have mechanical limbs. Mechanical civilization. 4 words popped into Qing Chen's mind. Before he could continue thinking, the burly prisoner in the next cell smiled at him. Hey, newcomer, don't eat too much breakfast, or it will be ugly when you vomit it out. As soon as the voice fell, there were many laughs in the corridor. I heard that 12 new people came last night. Today we can have some fun. This kid doesn't have any mechanical limbs. It seems he doesn't have any connections outside. Hearing the 3 words, newcomer, Qing Chen was taken aback. He thought the other party knew he had just crossed over from Earth, but soon he reacted. This newcomer should refer to his just entering prison. The other party probably doesn't know his Earthling identity. And Qing Chen pondered what the other party called entertainment. For him, it might be a disaster, but the question is, how should he survive among these mechanical beasts? He suppressed his inner turmoil and fear. As a normal high school student facing a sudden violent change, the only thing Qing Chen could do was to first force himself not to show any abnormalities, because he doesn't know, if the fact that he comes from another world is exposed, what consequences will it bring? Suddenly, a teenager across the 4th floor corridor started to panic. What is this place? I want to go home. I don't want to stay in this ghost place. Who are you guys? I am Huang Jixian. My dad is the chairman of Yongli Group in Luo City. Stay away from me. As he said that, the teenager actually started running crazily down the corridor. The others didn't move, they just stood in place watching as if they were watching a show, still maintaining the line to go to the dining hall for breakfast. Some people were a bit puzzled. Where is Luo City? Suddenly, Qing Chen heard a buzzing sound above his head. He looked up and found that 4 drone-like iron boxes on the high and deep ceiling were detaching from the wall and began to fall. Qing Chen's gaze stayed on the ceiling. On the alloy material wall, there were neatly embedded 18 Gatling-like 6-barrel gun turrets hanging upside down. As the panicked teenager ran, 9 of the gun turrets also rotated their barrels. Please stop moving. The drone emitted a female voice, warning again, please stop moving. Then, a female voice broadcast sounded in the prison fortress. Please all prisoners stand by at their current location. In just over 10 seconds, the 4 drones had the teenager deadlocked at a certain point in the corridor, with a gun barrel pointing at him directly below each drone. At the same time, gates opened at the bottom of the prison fortress, and 9 robots carrying unknown guns were entering the field at full speed. The teenager sat down in fear against the wall, while Qing Chen watched all this coldly. The other party's actions were a bit excessive, but it helped Qing Chen understand a lot of information. Machine guns, drones, robots, mechanical limbs, countless pieces of information all poured into his brain at once. But what surprised Qing Chen the most was that he suddenly realized when he saw the teenager's behavior, he might not be the only one who came from Earth to this place, not the first, and probably not the last. Qing Chen had once speculated whether other people would also have a countdown on their arms. It was precisely because of this guess that he had been so cautious about taking the subway to a distant place to verify some things, lest he be tracked down by others later. However, a series of unexpected events had almost made him forget this guess. Now it seems that his guess has become reality. The number of people who have traveled from Earth to this world must be considerable, with 2 in this prison alone, let alone the world outside the prison. How many travelers are there? Hundreds? Thousands? Why did they travel? Ching was not sure. This new guy is interesting, I'm afraid he's a fool, someone said with a laugh, looking at the young man who was breaking down. I heard he was sentenced to 7 years for tax evasion. He didn't cry when he was brought in yesterday, but he's crying now. Anyone who dares to provoke the tax collection agency these days is either a fool or... Ching looked in the direction of the voice. It was a young man with mechanical legs. Seeing Ching looking at him, he smiled and said, "Hey, newcomer, are you ready?" The crowd around him immediately burst into laughter, as if they were all waiting to see a good show. This place, although so sci-fi and advanced, seems to have not changed the evil side of human nature. Ching frowned, but did not respond. He looked again at the young man who was surrounded by drones. Perhaps only he knew that the reason why the other party did not cry yesterday and cried today was because he, like himself, had just traveled from the greenhouse on Earth and was having a hard time accepting this reality. This was not a guess, but he had seen him. Ching was 17 years old and a second-year student at a foreign language school in Luo City. And this young man who was breaking down was a first-year student. The two of them had no intersection, but Ching had a good memory and found it hard to forget anyone he had seen. This made Ching a little surprised. Could it be that if the positions before the crossing were close, the positions after the crossing would also be close? He wasn't sure. However, Ching did find one thing: everyone here speaks Mandarin, and there is no one who speaks dialect. At this moment, the machine guard was rushing up the stairs, each step spanning 5 steps, accompanied by a unique hydraulic transmission sound. The young man was already crying inconsolably. Half of the people in this prison fortress are equipped with mechanical limbs. Meeting people from Earth in a place where steel beasts are lurking makes one feel like meeting an old friend in a foreign country. Ordinary people, when they meet fellow villagers in a strange place, will feel a sense of safety for no reason, but Ching didn't feel this. He looked at the young man who was on the verge of collapse and realized that fellow villagers may not be able to help you, but may become a burden. Not everyone can remain calm in the face of this unfamiliar mechanical civilization. What he needs to do now is to survive these first 2 days and then return to Earth to understand why all this is happening. Ching quietly observed in a low-key manner. For some reason, his mood was even more calm at this moment. Until now, all the prisoners were still standing still. He looked around the prison fortress. 9 robots that had just rushed from the gate of the prison area left 3 on the square below, and the rest went upstairs to take the panicking young man away. The square downstairs is very wide. It feels like the size of a football field. The open square is divided into several areas: dining area, fitness equipment, entertainment area, reading area, audiovisual area, etc. There are no partitions between these areas, like a large free activity area, and there are 8 large steel gates distributed around the square. The gates are so large that they can probably allow armored vehicles to pass directly. Suddenly Ching was stunned. He saw that 3 people had somehow appeared next to the dining table downstairs. A middle-aged man in his 40s was sitting, and 2 young men were standing by his side, looking up at the prisoners upstairs with interest. There was a chessboard in front of the middle-aged man, and there was a game on the chessboard. What was most surprising was that next to the chessboard on the dining table, there was a cat lying down with its claws curled up, gray in color, with 2 tufts of pointed hair on its ears, looking a bit like a lynx, but not the main cat. Can you keep a cat in prison? Ching was a bit surprised. He had been attracted by his fellow villagers just now, so he didn't see when these 3 people and a cat came to the square. At this moment, the middle-aged man was still staring at the chessboard as if nothing had happened upstairs, and what surprised Ching the most was that even the robots on the square seemed to ignore these 3 people and a cat. The seriousness upstairs and the ease downstairs are in stark contrast. Like 2 different worlds. Among these 3 people, 2 young men were wearing normal blue and white prison uniforms, while the middle-aged man was wearing a white practice uniform. In this gray and oppressive environment, that white is extremely refined. Ching was secretly thinking, could this be the prison warden? No. Although the other party was wearing a practice suit different from other prisoners, there was a small black prison number embroidered on the chest of the practice suit. This middle-aged man is also a serving prisoner in the prison, but the most special one. As if feeling his gaze, one of the young men beside the middle-aged man suddenly turned his head and looked back at him with a smile. Ching immediately withdrew. After the panicking young Earth boy was taken away, a broadcast sounded again in the prison fortress: proceed to the dining hall for meals in order of queue. As soon as the voice fell, Ching saw all the prisoners turn right, then line up in a long line, and proceed to the square along the stairs. It was not until this time that Ching had the opportunity to count the number of all prisoners, including him: 3102. There are 7 floors in this prison fortress. Each floor of prisoners forms a team, led by the prisoners at the front of the team, orderly to the dining hall. During this period, no one jumped in line, and no one left the team. Ching Chin felt that everyone here seemed to be operating according to a predetermined program, as if everything had been restrained. This order did not end until everyone had finished their meals from the robot window. It seems that you can move freely after you have finished your meals. Ching Chin and his team live on the 5th floor, so by the time it was their turn to serve, the people on the 1st floor had already finished eating. He saw 2 burly prisoners dragging a young man directly to the nearest cell on the 1st floor, and many people were following them. Someone also instructed, "Hurry up and pull him into the cell, don't hurt him in the square, be careful of the machine." Prison guard intervening. The prisoner dragging the young man responded casually, "Don't worry, I'm not a fool like Yang Jia." At the same time, the young man was struggling and roaring, "Let go of me." But just as he was about to be pulled into the cell, the young man's voice turned into a plea, "Please, spare me." However, no matter what he said, no one paid any attention to his request, but it attracted more laughter. Suddenly, the old man with a mechanical eye in front of him turned around and laughed, "Stop looking around, it's your turn soon." Ching Chin looked at him calmly. The old man suddenly felt that the look in the boy's eyes seemed a bit different, and he didn't know why, but he suddenly felt a tightness in his heart after serving the food at the window. The formation was disorganized. Ching Chin noticed that 3 people around him were subtly approaching him, as if they wanted to control him directly. He immediately sped up his pace, and the other party also sped up their pace, keeping him tightly surrounded. The next moment, the scene in this prison fortress seemed to slowly pass through Ching Chin's mind. The 18 machine guns on the dome were waiting quietly, like sleeping tigers. The 72 drones were hanging in the gray alloy ceiling slots, like sleeping wasps. The 210 monitors were slowly turning their angles, and the 3 robots in the square were standing with guns. The prisoners were getting their food one by one from the window, and some people were complaining that it was the disgusting synthetic meat again today. Someone was washing dishes by the pool, and someone else was washing dishes for others. As more and more people finished their meals on the square, it became more lively. People were coming and going, some were going to the fitness area, and some were watching the new person ceremony, but everyone instinctively avoided the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man still listened to everything that was happening around him as if he hadn't heard anything. He looked seriously at the middle-aged man and said, "Pawn advances 1, I can solve this endgame." The middle-aged man only then looked up, and suddenly the square became quiet, and the cat also opened its eyes. Translate the above novel into English, requiring fluent language, in line with the reading habits of English native speakers. Before the middle-aged man raised his head, Ching Chin thought he was deaf. Such a big commotion around him, but it didn't seem to affect him at all. However, after the middle-aged man raised his head, Ching Chin almost thought he himself was deaf. The originally bustling square fell silent in an instant, without a single superfluous sound. The surprise in the eyes of the crowd, and some inexplicable emotions, seemed to be highlighting the man's identity, because in the past, this middle-aged man had never responded to anyone's plea for help. Suddenly, Ching Chin let out a sigh of relief, because all this proved that he had made the right bet. The middle-aged man didn't say anything to him, but calmly moved the red pawn forward on the chessboard. The black pieces he held chose to retreat, killing the pawn that had just advanced. Ching Chin watched the chessboard quietly from a distance. The 4 brigands capturing the king endgame was quite famous on Earth, with 2 layout forms, and the one in front of him was the more dangerous one. The so-called endgame generally means that the black side is bound to win, and the red side can't even make a draw. If it's a draw, it's considered to have solved the endgame, but Ching Chin was not satisfied with a draw. The 4 brigands capturing the king endgame was a bit peculiar. The red side had 4 pawns that had crossed the river and reached the end line, and both chariots were still present. The situation seemed to be evenly matched, but in fact, this endgame was full of traps and killing moves. The black side could win the game with just 1 move, while the red side could only run around in panic. One misstep, and they would think they had the game in their hands, only to be killed in return. This was a seemingly hopeful, but despairing endgame. "Continue," the middle-aged man said flatly. Ching Chin said, "Pawn 2 moves to 3. The middle-aged man's eyes lit up, and it seemed that he was really interested. He didn't bother to move the chess pieces on the chessboard, but directly closed his eyes and played blind chess with Ching Chin. King 6 moves forward 1. Ching Chin also closed his eyes. Rear chariot moves forward 4. Bishop 7 retreats 9. By the 6th round, Ching Chin suddenly said, "Chariot 1 moves forward 7. The middle-aged man's closed eyes suddenly opened again. He looked at Ching Chin in surprise. Bishop 5 retreats 7. In the first 5 steps, the 2 sides were plain and unremarkable. But after the 6th step, the 2 sides began to exchange pieces step by step. "I kill you. You kill me." Blood flows like a river, and the battlefield is full of mourning soldiers. The decisiveness of the 2 sides on the chessboard was extremely cruel. The 2 were like the calmest generals on the battlefield, sacrificing everything for the final victory. And the 4 brigands capturing the king endgame, the 2 of them brought out a spirit of bravery. However, behind this bravery were their deep calculations. At the beginning of the game, Ching Chen's red side had 4 pawns across the river, which seemed more fierce. But he sacrificed the 4 pawns one by one to exchange for other plans, leaving only the last one. chariot 1 moves to 4. King 4 moves to 5. Cannon 4 moves to 5. Chariot 3 moves to 5. On the 15th move, Qing Chen finally let out a long sigh of relief. Pawn 5 moves forward 1. The end is in sight, capture the king. It wasn't until this moment that the solution to the 4 brigands capturing the king endgame finally burst out with an indescribable charm. The situation where the two sides were killing each other on the battlefield made the middle-aged man feel as if he was really on the battlefield. Confronting a strategist, every move in this game was extremely dangerous. What surprised the middle-aged man the most was that the young man in front of him was not old. But he didn't hesitate at all when he was sacrificing pieces to change the game. It's important to never give up and never abandon, but war is war. How can there be no sacrifices in war? He quietly looked at the young man in front of him. The latter was also looking at him, his face serious and stubborn. It seemed that he wanted to fight his way out of this desperate situation and start a new life. He understood that he was playing chess, while the other party was trying to survive in an environment surrounded by steel beasts, and their attitudes were inherently different. One noticed that at this moment, of the 210 surveillance cameras in this prison fortress, 81 of them had turned directly towards Qing Chen, the black camera. Lens of the surveillance camera was contracting like a vortex, as if it was trying to focus on Qing Chen's face. One knew who was focusing on the other side of the surveillance camera. The middle-aged man smiled and turned the black king upside down on the chessboard. Interesting, there aren't many people who can play Chinese chess these days. Let's continue tomorrow. After saying that, he walked towards the reading area with his hands behind his back, leaving the chessboard on the dining table, which no one dared to touch. The gray cat on the table stood up and quietly followed the middle-aged man. When the cat was curled up, it looked like a fur ball and didn't look very big. However, when it stretched out, Qing Chen realized that the cat was over a meter long and exceptionally agile. Ordinary cats walk lightly, which is why people call it catwalk. But this cat walked with the posture of a tiger. Everyone in the square who was watching here was stunned. Was the endgame won by the young man? To be honest, they didn't understand Chinese chess either. When the two sides started playing blind chess, they understood even less. There were too many entertainment activities in this era, each of which was more exciting and fun than Chinese chess. They could use chips to directly obtain pleasure, and could also log into the virtual network with their consciousness. This was an era when happiness was very cheap, and there were very few people who played Chinese chess. Even if you play well, can you beat artificial intelligence? However, they were surprised that Qing Chen won against the middle-aged man. In their eyes, how could that middle-aged man lose? Whether it's chess or combat, how can he lose? To be honest, Qing Chen also found it strange. This middle-aged man obviously didn't have any mechanical limbs, nor did his two followers. Why was his prestige so high in this prison where steel beasts ran rampant? The young man who had been blocking Qing Chen earlier winked at him. Impressive. My name is Lin Xiao. He's Yuan. See you tomorrow. After saying that, he and another young man named Yuan left with the middle-aged man. Qing Chen didn't even know the name of the middle-aged man at this point, he only knew the names of the two followers. But now is undoubtedly a good start. The tense atmosphere in the square didn't ease until the middle-aged man and his followers, Yuan and Lin Xiao, all went to the reading area. The prisoner who had just been hosting the newcomers was still pulling the newcomers into the cell. Including him, there were 12 newcomers in total, and 9 of them had already been pulled in. At this point, when Qing Chen looked at the prisoners again, no one was plotting against him anymore. Suddenly, a young man with mechanical legs ran up to Qing Chen, anxiously saying, "We're both new here, help me, and I'll listen to you from now on." The surrounding prisoners watched coldly. They were still somewhat unclear about the situation. They knew they couldn't touch Qing Chen, but if this young man wanted to protect the other newcomers, they wouldn't be pleased either. However, Qing Chen seemed to turn a deaf ear to what the young man was saying, his expression as calm as if he hadn't heard anything. The prisoners laughed and forcefully pulled the young man away. "You guys!" The young man yelled. "My uncle is a director of the Changming Corporation in City 17. Before he could finish his sentence, the other prisoners laughed uproariously. Apart from the 5 major corporations, other companies are worthless. Even if your uncle were to come to this prison fortress, he would have to behave. Qing Chen silently listened to all of this, absorbing all the useful information. He had just been identifying the identities of these newcomers, trying to see if there were any other Earth people hidden among them. He himself had crossed over, completely devoid of memories of this world, and even now he didn't know how many years he had been sentenced to. Qing Chen believed that others also had no memories. So those like this young man who could talk about relationships outside the prison were probably not his compatriots. Among the 12 new prison mates, the Earth people should only be that collapsed teenager in him. For some reason, Qing Chen didn't feel disheartened at all, but rather looked forward to his drastically different life. A drastically different life. The phrase sounded very tempting when your own life has already become a mess, and someone puts a button in front of you saying, "Press this, and you'll have an extraordinary life." But after pressing it, there are 2 possibilities. It might get better. Or it might get worse. Would you press it? Qing Chen felt that he would. On Earth, he seemed to have always been an extra person. His father found him a burden, his mother had a new family, and his relatives rarely interacted with him. Qing Chen had been alone for 2 spring festivals. So, if your past life was all gloom, then, no matter how dangerous, unknown, or terrifying the new world is, it would still be somewhat exciting. This world was different. For Qing Chen, coming from Earth to here was like an adventure in a life of rebellion, and also like a release from the past. If it hadn't been for this countdown incident, he would have studied hard, worked hard to support himself, and then used his unique memory to get into a good, far-off university, never to return. But that kind of life seemed to still be meaningless. He believed that there weren't many people who had crossed over with him on Earth. Even if there were thousands or tens of thousands, compared to the total number, it was still a very small ratio. This made him feel special. Countdown 39 to 31 to 29. Qing Chen quietly observed everything around him, planning to record all the information he could see and analyze it slowly. When he returned to his cell alone, above a metal gate next to the square, a blue holographic projection was displaying the time, AM 8 to 29. The three-dimensional holographic image looked so novel and eye-catching. It was 8:29 in the morning. At this moment, a young man took advantage of the other's distraction and suddenly came to Qing Chen's side and whispered, "You're finally here. You look just as good as the rumors say. I'm Lu Guangyi, sent by Qing Yan 3 months ago. You can call me Little Lu." Qing Chen. He paused and looked at the other. This Lu Guangyi looked about 24 or 25 years old, with short black hair. His right arm and left leg were fitted with mechanical limbs, and he even had mechanical eyes. Qing Chen could even see the spiral patterns in his eyes changing focus. His mechanical limbs were different from most of the convicts, both in terms of streamlined design and material. They looked very sophisticated. Qing Chen searched his memory, tracking the other's behavior. At this point, Qing Chen realized that Lu Guangyi had looked at him 21 times in just over an hour. And that was just the times he was in his line of sight. Qing Chen didn't know who this person was, but the way he spoke, it was clear that he knew him, and he was even using respectful language. According to Lu Guangyi, it seemed that Qing Chen's entry into this prison fortress had a purpose, but Qing Chen was afraid of revealing his crossover, so he didn't want to have too much interaction with Lu Guangyi for the time being. "I don't need your help for now. I can do some things on my own." Lu Guangyi shook his head like a rattle. No, I have to serve you well." Qing Chen also shook his head. "No one's personality is more noble than anyone else's. You don't have to use the word serve. At this point, Lu Guangyi said ingratiatingly, "No, you can order me around as much as you want. You can treat me as your dog, the kind that licks feet." Qing Chen was speechless. What kind of person would say such a shameless thing? "What if I have athlete's foot?" Lu Guangyi said unabashedly, "Then I can lick it well for you." Qing Chen was silent for a long time. Awesome. He was a bit baffled now. He had clearly crossed over with his body and consciousness. Why did he have such a weird past relationship? So, in the eyes of the people in this world, had he really lived in this world for so many years? Seeing Qing Chen still silent, Lu Guangyi whispered, "You were planning to approach Uncle Li as a newcomer this morning. That's brilliant. If we can get Uncle Li's help in this prison fortress, our plan will go much smoother." Qing Chen, "What plan? What are you talking about? Can you be more clear?" Lu Guangyi continued as if talking to himself, "I've been here for over 3 months, and I've gathered a group of usable people for you. Don't worry, they won't fail." The young man chattered. Qing Chen felt that Lu Guangyi seemed a bit talkative, while he just listened quietly, not knowing how to respond. It was like playing Who's the Undercover. When you get a blank card, you have to wait for everyone else to speak before you can say anything. Otherwise, if everyone else's word is urine, and you're the first to speak and say it's drinkable, there will be a big problem. He searched in his mind and found that at breakfast, there were subtly hundreds of people around Lu Guangyi, each of them fitted with mechanical limbs. It seemed that these people were the subordinates Lu Guangyi had recruited after he came in. Seeing Qing Chen still silent, Lu Guangyi asked again in a low voice, "But, you also have to be careful with Uncle Li. Dealing with such a person is like asking a tiger for its skin. If we're not careful, we might end up in a passive position." "Sorry, I spoke out of turn." At this point, Qing Chen realized that the Uncle Li Lu Guangyi was talking about must be that middle-aged man. Lu Guangyi saw that he had gone to play chess with Uncle Li as soon as he came in, and mistakenly thought that he had come with a mission, but he was getting close to Uncle Li, not for some damn plan, but to survive. "What instructions did you bring this time?" Lu Guangyi suddenly asked. Qing Chen slowly turned his head to look at the young man. "A llama came from the south." The young man? Qing Chen ignored him and turned to leave, leaving Lu Guangyi standing there in a daze. "A llama came from the south? What kind of llama?" Out of the 3,102 inmates, most of them are either messing with the newcomers or hanging out in the entertainment area, with only a few working out in the fitness equipment area. It seems that reading is not a popular activity among them. This makes Li Shutong, Lin Xiaoxiao, and Yuan stand out. Lin Xiaoxiao, with his playful smile, crouches on a chair, barefoot, his shoes scattered nearby. Yuan stands straight behind Li Shutong, occasionally scanning the surroundings. Lin Xiaoxiao, with his clear eyebrows and smart appearance, seemed particularly clever, while Yuan was relatively more robust. With a bit more determination on his face. One looked more like a scholar, and the other more like a bodyguard. Upon seeing Li Shutong finish reading the news, Lin Xiaoxiao said, "Boss, the young man didn't help the other newcomers." Li Shutong nodded. It's normal not to help. He was decisive when playing chess, and he could even amputate his arm to survive, let alone helping others. So, boss, do you still want to continue playing chess with him tomorrow? Lin Xiaoxiao asked after a moment of thought. Yes, Li Shutong smiled and said, if I don't play chess with him, who else should I play with? You two lousy players. In the reading area, Li Shutong is sitting next to a long wooden table, holding a brand new reader in his hand and reading the news seriously. The huge cat is once again sleeping on the table, as if the meaning of a cat's life is to sleep in different places. This reading area is like a small library, but the bookshelves here are not filled with paper books, but readers charging in slots. There are dozens of long tables in the middle of the bookshelves, enough to accommodate nearly 1,000 people, but at this moment they are empty. Yuan's heavy voice said from the side, I'm a bit better than Lin Xiaoxiao. But not much better. Li Shutong looked at Yuan and pointed to the news on the reader. Do you remember Guo Huchan caught by the Qin group? The trial process is over, and he should be transferred to this number 18 prison in a few days. You should interact with him then. Yuan nodded. I've dealt with him once before. Although he's not easy to get along with, at least he's communicative. Li Shutong nodded and turned to Lin Xiaoxiao. What do you think about the breakdown of the young man this morning? I've been observing for a long time, and I always feel that something is wrong. Lin Xiaoxiao analyzed. It seems that the young man was talking nonsense after the breakdown, but when he mentioned Luo City and Yongli Group, he was very certain, as if it was true. What's his identity? Li Shutong asked. I checked it out. He's just an ordinary dropout from a middle school in the outside world. He followed the Black Tiger organization in city number 18 to do business in mechanical prosthetics. He was suspected of illegally robbing mechanical prosthetics, but there was no evidence. He was finally sent here for tax evasion. All his past life experiences can be found, but the Luo City and Yongli Group he mentioned can't be found, Lin Xiaoxiao said. No one saw Lin Xiaoxiao checking anything, but he seemed to have checked the broken down young man in just an hour. This is the most amazing part. Li Shutong said, continue to pay attention, there must be other problems with this young man. Also, what's the situation with the one playing chess with me? Lin Xiaoxiao said, you just finished this game of chess, I haven't had time to check yet. I can give you an answer before the lunch break. Good, Li Shutong nodded while continuing to flip through the reader. Lin Xiaoxiao secretly glanced at Li Shutong, and he suddenly realized that the boss was interested in that young man. Just as he was about to say something more, Lin Xiaoxiao turned his head to look outside the reading area. At this time, Qing Chen was slowly walking over, carefully examining the surroundings. Qing Chen first looked at Li Shutong and then tried to gently pull out a pad-like reader from the bookshelf and pressed the power button. Qing Chen stared at the screen. If there is any way to quickly understand this world, it must be to read the books of this world. He didn't expect that this world had even eliminated paper books, leaving only electronic products. However, the reader did not show an operating interface after it was turned on, but a login interface. Lin Xiaoxiao came over with a light smile. Is this your first time in prison? If you want to use this reader, you have to register an account with your inmate number. After you log in, it will show your recent reading trajectory, your bookmarks, and your reading habits and font size settings. Qing Chen thought that this thing was quite user-friendly. By the way, it also has a built-in artificial intelligence voice. You can call its name to help you find the content you want to find, like this. Lin Xiaoxiao also pulled out a reader and said, I'm here. A pleasant female voice sounded from the reader. Qing Chen remembered this voice, which was exactly the same as the voice that announced the meal in the prison fortress. A formalized tone, but it doesn't make people feel rigid. Lin Xiaoxiao said to the reader, help me find the book Brown. Okay, I have found Brown for you, the artificial intelligence responded. Look, Lin Xiaoxiao handed the reader in his hand to Qing Chen. The book called Brown had already opened the page. Qing Chen looked at his prison uniform. The number was 010101. After he registered, Qing Chen looked at Lin Xiaoxiao. Where can I read the news, the kind that he has in his hand? Lin Xiaoxiao looked back at his boss's reader in his hand and then laughed. Don't even think about it. Your reader account doesn't have internet access, not even me. Qing Chen understood. It seems that Li Shutong's status in this prison is truly extraordinary, just like he could keep a cat in prison. He didn't say anything more, but thanked him and then lowered his head to read the content in his reader. Lin Xiaoxiao returned to Li Shutong's side and glanced at Qing Chen casually, but he suddenly found that Qing Chen's reader was flipping pages very fast. Generally, a reader has 800 words per page. It takes at least a minute for a normal person to read. But Qing Chen's page-turning frequency is 2 seconds. Lin Xiaoxiao whispered to Li Shutong, boss, he's not really reading the reader at all. He might just want to get close and get a chance to get along with you. Don't be nosy, Li Shutong said without lifting his head, don't underestimate others' desire to survive. If you and him switch roles, you might be even more eager. Xiao Xiao, you need to learn to think from another perspective. Lin Xiao Xiao said with a playful smile, I know. Qing Chen found a place to sit down. He kept recording the content of the reader and then quickly flipped the page. He watched for more than 3 hours like this, and he didn't even change his sitting position. For others, reading may be a pastime after meals, but for him, it is one of the ways to understand this world and survive. The content on the reader is obviously carefully selected, with almost no important information, and 95% of the content is philosophy and chicken soup for the soul. But it doesn't matter. Any information is important to him now. Qing Chen has always been a person who cherishes opportunities. When it was almost lunchtime, Li Shutong finally put down the reader in his hand and logged out of his account. Ye Wan, who was on the side, took the reader and put it back in the slot on the bookshelf. Ye Wan and Lin Xiao Xiao are like the closest followers beside Li Shutong. When Li Shutong got up, he glanced at Qing Chen. He felt something was wrong. The young man was so focused on reading that he didn't seem to notice him getting up, which didn't seem like he was pretending. He suddenly asked, what is the content of the third line on the previous page? This voice is gentle and jade-like. When he speaks, it feels like he's suddenly in an antique tea room, listening to the teachings of the elders. When order becomes chaos, one has to use chaos to maintain order and save the law. Qing Chen looked up and said. Ye Wan took the reader from Qing Chen and turned to the previous page. Boss, that's correct. At this moment, Qing Chen suddenly saw the big cat on the table open its eyes. He clearly felt that the other party was looking at him with surprise. It's as if the other party has always been able to understand everyone's conversations and was also surprised at Qing Chen's memory. Li Shutong was stunned for a moment after hearing Yuan's confirmation, and then he called the big cat and left with a smile. It's getting more interesting, let's go, it's time for lunch. For some reason, Qing Chen always thought that there was something uniquely graceful about the way Uncle Li moved. The fluttering of his white practice uniform seemed as if he was walking on clouds. In this prison where the iron beast roams, how does one survive? Qing Chen couldn't rely on Lu Guangyi, whose origin was unclear, for fear that his identity replacing the original host would be exposed, nor could he expect any help from his fellow compatriots from the same time and space, as they were worse off than him. Therefore, Qing Chen openly revealed his abilities to Uncle Li, to prove that he was a useful person. Undoubtedly, Uncle Li was the most transcendent being in this prison. Although his actions were risky, it was the best way out. Uncle Li left leisurely with his hands behind his back. Yuan and Big Cat followed him, and Lin Xiao Xiao was nowhere to be seen with a playful smile on his face. Before lunchtime, the food window opened early for Uncle Li. Yuan got meals for Uncle Li and Big Cat. Big Cat was eating pickly. At this time, Lin Xiao Xiao popped out from somewhere, kicked off his shoes, and squatted barefoot on the chair opposite Uncle Li's table. Big Cat glanced at him, and Yuan frowned and said, "Show some respect in front of the boss." Lin Xiao Xiao rolled his eyes. The boss didn't say anything. "Yi Ma, you're overstepping." Uncle Li smiled and said, "It seems you've gained something." "Yes," Lin Xiao Xiao excitedly said, "I gained a lot. You know, this Qing Chen is clean outside, I can't find any abnormal clues, but this makes me interested." "Because it's too clean?" Uncle Li asked. "Yes, it's too clean. His record shows that he is a high school student from City 18, his parents died in a car accident, he inherited a legacy, no criminal records, no cases, no relatives," Lin Xiao Xiao said. "What's his crime?" Uncle Li asked. "Theft. The record shows that he stole a liquid crystal phone that just met the sentencing criteria," Lin Xiao Xiao said. "You also know that more than half of the people in this 18th prison are serious criminals, usually with a long criminal record or caught by the tax authorities. He, a thief, shouldn't appear in such a place at all." In just a while, Lin Xiao Xiao had read Qing Chen's case file, which seemed like a person with great connections in the eyes of ordinary people. Lin Xiao Xiao continued, "And, I asked someone outside, his case is controversial. He claimed that he bought the liquid crystal phone normally and paid for it. But for some reason, the seller didn't account for it, and the surveillance was suddenly broken and couldn't prove his innocence. So, once the telephone seller turns back to testify for him, or his payment surveillance video appears, then he can go out immediately. You see, this is such a familiar method. Most people who come to prison to do something are this routine." Uncle Li was thoughtful. "How long was he sentenced?" 6 months, Lin Xiao Xiao answered. "This is probably the shortest sentence in the history of the 18th prison." "Boss, don't you think there's a problem with this? His surname is Qing." The surname Qing was too special in this era. 5 large companies monopolized almost all economic lifelines, one of which was named Qing, and Qing was a rare surname, so if you suddenly meet someone named Qing on the street, you would wonder if the person was from the Qing family. "Continue," Uncle Li smiled. "You also know that the Qing group arranged for a Lu Guangyi to come in before," Lin Xiao Xiao said. "This kind of thing is easy to check. I was just wondering at the time why they wanted to arrange such a small role to come in. What do they want to do?" "I remember that Lu Guangyi," Yi Wan said on the side, "he has always been gathering people." Yes, Lin Xiaoxiao smiled. After Lu Guangyi came in, he relied on his sophisticated mechanical limbs to suppress the local forces in the prison all the way, and in just 1 month, he confronted the other two factions and formed a tripartite situation. I was wondering at the time, is Qing sending him to unify the 18th prison? Qing knows the boss is here. Yuan's implication was that with Uncle Li here, no one could unify this place. Lin Xiaoxiao squinted his eyes and said, so I was wondering if Qing was crazy, and sent a little shrimp to the 18th prison to make trouble. Until today I realized that Lu Guangyi was here to pave the way for this little guy, Qing Chen. No matter what Qing wants to do, Qing Chen is the main one, and Lu Guangyi is just a runner. At this time, Lin Xiaoxiao was puzzled again, but what do they want in this 18th prison? If this little guy Qing Chen really is a direct line of Qing, why would he be willing to come here? Uncle Li suddenly said, Qing may be selecting the next generation of shadow. Yuan and Lin Xiaoxiao were stunned at the same time. The next shadow? Qing Chen is one of the candidates? So he came here with a mission. A large consortium needs both face and substance. The family head of Qing is the face, and the shadow is the substance. The shadow does all the dirty work, holds heavy authority, and is the master of the underworld of the Qing group, and no one can control it except the family head. However, the selection process for each generation of shadow is extremely cruel, like raising a goo. It seems that Qing is going to stir everyone up again. Uncle Li lamented. As they were talking, a prisoner inadvertently walked over, and Yuan suddenly turned his head to look at him from a distance of more than 5 meters. The prisoner was stared at by these soul-shaking eyes, and involuntarily turned and walked in another direction. Uncle Li and the three of them no longer continued to discuss this topic. Lin Xiaoxiao asked, Boss, even if he is a shadow candidate, there is no need to make his identity background so clean, as if he has nothing to do with Qing. By now, everyone was convinced that Qing Chen was from Qing. At their level, they least believed in coincidences. Unless, there is a bigger secret hidden in Qing Chen's life, Uncle Li said. Boss, have you guessed something? Lin Xiaoxiao was curious. Uncle Li shook his head. Just after you said that, I suddenly felt that he looked a bit like someone. Enemy? Or friend? Have Yi Ma and I seen him? Lin Xiaoxiao was curious. Uncle Li said, you haven't seen him, but you will meet him sooner or later. Xiaoxiao, if the relationship in this world can be simply divided into friends and enemies, that would be great. As he was speaking, Uncle Li took the gray cat on the table into his arms and gently rubbed the cat's chin. The big cat closed its eyes comfortably and lay lazily on Uncle Li's lap. He said to Lin Xiaoxiao, I'm more interested in this Qing Chen, you go and test his character. Lin Xiaoxiao was shocked. Boss, do you fancy him? He's from Qing. I'm just asking you to test him, not to do anything. Uncle Li laughed. And, isn't it more interesting to snatch people from Qing? But I feel like he's not one of us, Lin Xiaoxiao murmured, staring at his feet. Uncle Li smiled and said, there should be all kinds of people in an organization, tigers that keep the mountain, eagles that see far, wolves that are good at fighting, leopards that are agile, dogs that are loyal, all have their own duties. Lin Xiaoxiao's eyes lit up. Boss, what am I in the organization? Uncle Li thought for a while. A fish that paddles. Yuan said calmly, a shit stirrer. Lin Xiaoxiao.